Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and today's topic of the day is going to be piggybacking off what we talked about last time, but an entirely different show. We did the best SmackDown matches in my last video previously. Now today we're going to be talking about the best Raw matches. We're going all the way back to 1993 to present. I'm not going to list each and every single Raw match, come on now, but I am going to list my favorites in the almost 31 years I've been watching professional wrestling, WWE mainly. Let me just say that Monday Night Raw is the greatest professional wrestling show ever created. All the way back in my childhood, at the age 6, I remember watching Monday Night Raw with my brother growing up in the living room, the playroom, and the porch of our house that we grew up in. Even when it started out as just a 1-hour program, and it wasn't always live every week, till the Attitude Era was live every other week, and then every week it's live now, 2-hour format, up, and then, of course, 2012 when they went to 3 hours, and now they go between 2 and 3 hours now. It's a little confusing on Netflix. But man, I'll never forget coming home from school or going to school on a Monday and thinking to myself, gee, what the hell's going to happen on Raw tonight? I cannot wait. I would think about, oh my God, these storylines are so good. There was never a better time to be a kid and a wrestling fan at the same time than the late 90s and the early 2000s. 1999 is my favorite year for WWE, WWF, whatever. And I just remember thinking to myself, okay, Raw was so great. What's going to happen to Austin and Rock and Taker and Foley and Kane, whatever, Triple H? There was just this innate excitement. It was this intangible feeling I can't really describe. You just feel it. And my interest was very big, especially in the Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression Era for some part of it, and then it kind of died down. It wasn't until like late 08, early 09 I got to college and started watching it with some friends, and I watched it with some friends in high school too, but the product in high school wasn't so great for me. It got better when I got to college, and I remember we would get excited, even in a PG product, it was still pretty exciting, you know, with Cena and Orton, Batista, Triple H yet again, and Jericho, Edge, those guys. So, Monday Night Raw is always about excitement. You cannot wait to see what's going to happen tonight. Some of the most riveting storylines, some of those groundbreaking storylines, feuds, rivalries, moments, they all taken place on this show. Doesn't matter the format. Probably my favorite iteration was Raw is War from 1997 to 2001. As a kid, it took me a while to get adjusted from everything being red, white, and blue with the blue mats on the outside and blue ring skirt, red, white, and blue ropes. Everything became red ropes, black ring post, black ring skirt with Raw's War in red and white, and then black mats. So everything changed by the spring of 97 to look a lot more grittier and edgier than it had previously. I loved Monday Night Raw, but the change was necessary, otherwise we'd have gone out of business. The big letters. Oh, there's just so much I could say about Monday Night Raw. We just call it that historically because that's what people have grown up on, and the show is now 33 years old and still running strong, and I don't watch it every week because sometimes I go to an acoustic open mic, play guitar Monday nights, but I'll watch it tonight since here in the Northeast we're snowed in right now, so there's not much I can do other than watch Raw. So I'm going to tell you about some of my favorite matches in no particular order. I just thought about these and haven't really gone back to watch them yet, but I will, and just kind of tell you what I remember from muscle memory. So here we go. My first favorite match is probably the first great match they ever had on Raw, which was from January 25th, 1993. It was only the third episode ever made of Monday Night Raw, and it was taped because they were in Sacramento, California for the Royal Rumble that year. It was Ric Flair versus Mr. Perfect in a loser leaves WWF match. This one was kind of predictable because all the insiders at the time knew that Ric Flair, his contract was running thin with it was running out with WWF, and he wanted to go back to WCW. Since he knew Jim Herd was gone, that's why he left in the first place in 1991. I was only 4 years old, so there's not a lot of personal recollection, but I went back and watched this match. Flair and Perfect had great chemistry. It's probably Flair's best match. That, and there's like 3 Flair matches I actually really love. That match, Taboo Tuesday 2004 with Randy Orton in the steel cage, which had no right to be as great as it was for a main event. And then, of course, WrestleMania 24 and the career-threatening match with Shawn Michaels, which he lost. His last match, technically, for the Federation. Yeah, they just went back and forth. Perfect, you know. He had a neck injury that needed to heal for about a year, but he was ready to come back in the fall of 92. Perfect was Flair's executive consultant and then turned on him when Savage needed a partner for their Survivor Series match. I talked about that Survivor Series 92 when I tried to rewrite it. And he turned face. And he didn't miss a beat. He just kind of picked up right where he left off from his last match, which would have been against Bret at SummerSlam 91. Great match, by the way. So Perfect came back in full force and gave Flair a run for his money. And Flair did every dirty tactic he could, because he's the dirtiest player in the game. Took out every dirty trick in the book he could utilize and muster. And Perfect finally got the win with the Perfect Plex, and that was it. 1, 2, 3. Flair was out of the company, and they sang na 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 na. Hey hey hey, goodbye. That was by Steam, if you don't remember that one-hit wonder 80s band. Bobby Heenan was none too pleased. That's not fair to Flair. He would say something like that. Well, maybe Bobby wasn't on commentary yet, because you had Vince McMahon, Macho Man Randy Savage, and AM Radio's Rob Bartlett, who used to be on the radio show with Don Imus back in the day, on Imus in the Morning. Rob Bartlett from AM Radio. Oh, he would say things that were kind of off the cuff, and one time he tried to impersonate Mike Tyson from prison. Get me out of here. So, let's see, Macho Man, wow, they really did him dirty here, because he deserved to maybe win the Rumble that year and have a match at WrestleMania 9, not be settled as a color commentator. And this voice is not something you want to listen to for a full hour, let alone 2 hours or 3 hours. It's a voice that's saved for special occasions. It's too raspy to talk. He's going to get him in that. This is sounding more like Jesse the Body Ventura, if I said, but a little more Midwestern. But Savage is from Illinois originally. Yeah, Macho Man and Mr. Vince McMahon, Rob Bartlett, AM Radio. Uncooked, uncut, uncensored Monday Night Raw. Oh, yeah. So Savage was probably happy Flair was gone, as Flair stole the belt back from Savage at a house show in September 92. So yeah, it's last we saw of Flair for 8 years, until he returned to the company in November of 01, right after the invasion, and was the consortium to Shane and Stephanie when they sold their stock in the alliance. We're partners! Woo! First time I saw Flair live on TV, and I was 13, as I missed his first run initially. So that's one match. Another match brings us to July the 11th, 1994. World Wrestling Federation Championship. Bret Hart defending against the 1-2-3 Kid. I don't know exactly how 1-2-3 Kid became number one contender, but it was a match made in heaven. There weren't many great matches at that time, but boy, Bret Hart could work these matches. He was quite the workhorse at this time. And the 1-2-3 Kid was just really hitting his stride in that ring too. Sean Waltman. So Bret and the Kid. Oh, Bret with his technical prowess, Kid with his aerial offense. It's like peanut butter and jelly. It just meshed well, and everything just clicked. And it was a good 20, 25-minute match. You had Jim Ross on commentary, who was brought back in right at the end of the steroid trial, because McMahon was facing some legal trouble, and then he was having neck surgery. So there was that whole mess going on. The Kid came close on a number of occasions. God, he was so young at that time. He was like 22, maybe, something like that. Oh, he'd have been the youngest world champ if before Lesnar came around. And Bret held his own, of course, and then the sharpshooter's what got him. But you knew the Kid wasn't going to win, because Bret and Owen were in the midst of an intense, heated rivalry that would culminate at SummerSlam in the Steel Cage match. Another 5-star match from Dave Meltzer, SummerSlam 94, Steel Cage, Bret Owen for the belt. So you knew 1-2-3 Kid wasn't going to win, but you knew they were thinking highly of him, giving him that title shot, that sort of little mini main event rub, if you will. That mini main event rub is good just to show what you're made of. And they knew he could hang, so, it's obvious they knew that, because they put him in some high-profile storylines later on in his career when he returned as X-Pac. X-Pac was involved in feuds with Kane, Triple H. Who was another high-profile person he had feuded with at the time? Probably the Dudleys, maybe, later on. Shane McMahon, okay. But it wasn't anything upper main event. It was like upper mid-card. That's about it for X-Pac. But it was perfect for the 1-2-3 Kid that night in that match, and they shook hands. It was just a class act all around, what wrestling should be about. As childish and cartoonish as the New Generation era was, these are some of the hidden gems that don't get talked about as often. And they should be, because this is the reason to watch matches from the New Generation. Bret Hart in his prime, Shawn Michaels in his prime. Look at Sean Waltman, 1-2-3 Kid in his prime. It doesn't get any better than this, I swear. It's amazing. So go back and watch that match for sure, and you will not be sorry. Let's go over to the ladies' side of things, shall we? I believe this match was the very first, no, actually it was the second time the ladies ever main evented Monday Night Raw. The first was in August 2000 when Lita defeated Stephanie McMahon for the women's title. But I'll do you one better. We're going to go now to December the 6th of 2004. For the women's championship, Trish Stratus defending against Lita. And Lita was victorious in this match and won only her second women's championship, which it took her 4 years to win after losing her first women's championship in October of 2000. So that's a long time between women's title reigns. Lita had that neck injury from Dark Angel, and yeah, they just didn't pull the trigger on giving her the belt again. She was so popular, she almost didn't need the belt, you could argue, and same could be said for other competitors in other capacities. But in any event, this rivalry, oh boy, did it get turned up a notch, more than one notch, 2 or 3 notches. Trish turned heel at WrestleMania 20 when she betrayed Chris Jericho in his match against Christian. My brother and I were in attendance that night. Great match, by the way. So she sided with Christian, and then Christian hired this guy Tyson Tomko as a bodyguard / problem solver to do all their dirty work. Eventually, Tomko was then, when Christian got injured after a steel cage match in May of 2004 on Raw against Jericho, Trish used the services of Tomko to help her in her women's title defenses during her 5th reign. And when Christian returned in the fall of 2004, he was able to retrieve the services of Tomko back to him. So Trish no longer had Tomko in her corner. Then she turned her attention to Lita and made fun of her for that whole pregnancy angle with Kane, taunted her every which way, made fun of her, for marrying him, tried to be a maid of honor, and the other girls like Gail Kim and Molly Holly and Jazz being bridesmaids. It was all so stupid. But it was worthwhile because Lita finally got her revenge. Now, this match was originally set for the Survivor Series of 2004, but Lita lost her cool. She could not keep her cool in that match because she initially attacked Trish before the bell started and broke her nose in kayfabe, I want to say, or maybe she did. It's hard to know with a broken bone versus, doing a blade job. Didn't look like a blade job, so she might have legit broke it. But that was all part of the fuel to add to the fire. But the fact they did it on pay-per-view was kind of a ripoff because you don't pay to watch a match like that. That's like an angle you'd watch on Raw. I don't like when they do these angles on pay-per-views to build to something you're going to watch for a payoff on free TV. That's always my theory, and I don't like that thinking, but that's just me. So finally, we get to Monday Night Raw that week, and this was coming off the heels of Survivor Series 2004. The babyface Survivor Series team in the main event that night, it was Maven, Chris Benoit, Randy Orton, and Chris Jericho won that match, so they reserve the right. They win the right to each be a general manager for the night for the next 4 weeks. First it was Maven, then it was Chris Benoit, then it was Randy Orton, and finally the last host was Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho hosted the December 6th Raw. He was the general manager for the night, and he booked Trish to defend her women's title against Lita in the main event. Smart move, Chris. I love it. To get revenge for how she cost him his match at WrestleMania 20 and the whole love triangle with Christian. So, finally the match happens. Lita keeps her cool, waits for the bell to ring, but she does this devastating dive, this plancha right through the ropes, and landed neck first, like that. Oh, I thought it was over. She re-injured her neck. Oh my God, it was so serious looking. Ended like that. Ugh. So, Lita's incapacitated for a while. She basically had to kill herself to beat Trish, and Trish is taking advantage of the attack, and Lita being down and out. Finally, Lita musters up some strength, and finally dodges a few chick kicks. Was able to get away from a Stratusfaction, avoid that one. Finally hit the twist of fate, and then the moonsault, and finally the victory. 1, 2, 3, new women's champion! Boy hits car, Love Fury, Passion Energy starts playing. My God, it was such a special victory. She hadn't won the women's title in 4 fucking years. Had been out of action for so long, missed almost a year and a half of action. And the year of hell in kayfabe with Kane and Trish, everything just culminated to something good. But also around that time, there was something kind of dark going on that didn't brew and didn't culminate till the summer of that year, which was Lita was cheating on Matt Hardy. And that's a whole other story for another day. But while this was going on, she was having an affair with Edge. So her success was very short-lived. She had a great night and was able to close out the year as women's champ, but then suffered a torn ACL at New Year's Revolution 2005 in her women's title defense, her rematch against Trish, she tore ACL doing a Luthez press, attempting to do it off the ring apron onto the outside. And then Trish was able to capitalize with a chick kick and a very rushed finish because she wasn't supposed to win back the belt that night. It was supposed to be at WrestleMania. And I asked Trish about that when I met her at WrestleCon 2 years ago in Philly. She said maybe, because, she didn't want to confirm or deny anything if it's an internet rumor. So Trish won her 6th women's title unexpectedly at New Year's Revolution 05. 6-time women's champion, and Lita had yet another injury to overcome, so she misses another Mania. And yeah, the feud never quite got the conclusion I wanted it to as far as that, but I guess you could argue it Unforgiven in 06, which was supposed to be Trish's last match, but wasn't. Her final women's title reign, 7-time women's champion for one night only. That's when it ended. Lita was already a heel by that point, and Trish was a face, so it didn't feel the same, like a year and a half later, so great match, and it set the tone for what women's wrestling should have been. And at one point, I was thinking to myself, that's the last time the women ever had anything relevant to do with having a professional wrestling match, because you didn't see wrestling of that caliber for a long time with the women because they were so short. The matches were so cut short and very rushed. It wasn't until 2015, the Bell Love Twins trended this thing on Twitter, hashtag give divas a chance, and then now we don't call them divas anymore, and they're on equal par with the men. So it set the tone for better things to come, even though it took a long time to implement that. So great stuff there. Got a couple of tag team matches I want to talk to y'all about. May 21st, 2001, for the tag team championship, the two-man power trip, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H versus Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho. That was a great main event, great action from all 4 men. The two-man power trip was actually great stuff. Austin turning heel at Mania should have happened the next night on Raw, but I loved his alignment with Triple H. I think it was going to culminate at King of the Ring, but Triple H, unfortunately, and what this match is best remembered as, he tore his quadricep, hitting Jericho with the tag title belt, and I think, it was his right quad that gave out. No, it was his left quad that gave out. The right one he tore at New Year's Revolution 07. That's another story for another day. And by God, he finished the match. Triple H, that's why he's called the Game, because he doesn't quit on things like this. He finished the match. Jericho had him in a Walls of Jericho on the announce table. He's all tangled up in a fan, and Benoit, I believe, gets Austin to submit with the crippler crossface. And so Jericho and Benoit win the tag titles, and Triple H is carried up the ramp by referees and Stephanie, who's managing him at the time. And, wow, he misses 8 months of action. But that match in of itself, Austin was coming back from neck surgery, so he was kind of slowing down career-wise, but still gave it his all. 01 was still a great year for him. 02, not so much. Benoit and Jericho were really hitting their stride as growing as main eventers, so it was an exciting time to be a fan, even post-Attitude Era. It was still edgy, if you will, the product, and they were able to put on a great match. Benoit and Jericho with their combination of technical. Jericho was technical and also an aerialist. Benoit was mostly technical. He didn't do a lot of flying moves, save for the flying headbutt. Austin, Triple H was more technical, and Austin was more brawling, ground and pound. So you had a lot of great combination of styles just meshing well here, and that's what makes these matches so great. And it was quick, too, at times, and JR, Paul Heyman on commentary really suit this well. So great match there. Another tag match, we're going back 4 years earlier. That was May 21st, 2001. Now we're at May 26, 1997. Owen Hart and British Bulldog defending their tag team championships against Stone Cold Steve Austin and the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, the unlikeliest of tag team partners, if you ask me. They didn't like each other. They didn't see eye to eye on anything back then. So Owen and Bulldog were already champs for 245 days going into this. They beat the Smoking Guns at In Your House Mind Games, September 96. Here we are, May 97. Quick action, Shawn finally got over that knee injury, which made him lose his smile, was back to his old self. Him and Owen just ricocheting back and forth like two ping pong balls in the ring. Brute force coming from Austin and Bulldog. Who was it? I think Austin got the stunner on Owen and pinned him, and the crowd just went wild. And then you had Neidhart and Pillman getting in the ring. Brett was still incapacitated with his bad knee, so he was sitting in the wheelchair at the top of the ramp. The whole Hart Foundation angle was so intense, and it was just fun to watch. America versus Canada at this time, the spring, summer of 97. And the product was turning a corner as far as becoming edgier. So you remember how I said, by this point, Raw's War was in full effect. You had the red ropes. black ring posts, black ring skirt with Raw's War emblazoned on it, and then the black mats on the outside. No more red, white, and blue stuff, which I was missing because I was still a young kid watching it. As a young kid, you probably enjoyed the cleaner product more. But this is just one man's opinion after all. But a great match there. Probably my favorite Raw match, I want to talk about that before I run out of time, brings us to December the 29th, 2003. It's the Go Home Raw of 2003. Triple H defending his World Heavyweight Championship against the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, none other than his best friend and better enemy. Great friend, better enemy, if you will. This was a DQ ending. They went 29 minutes in the final match on Raw in 2003. And this was the Raw brand here. So Raw and SmackDown already had their respective brands. Triple H was the World Heavyweight Champion for about in his 8th run at this point. 3rd with the world title and 8th overall world title run. And everyone was sick and tired of him main eventing and, abusing his power. This is the whole reign of terror we're talking about. HBK had tried time and time again to win it, and he wanted one more chance. And this was the time where it looked like everything was turning in favor of the Heartbreak Kid. And back and forth action with forearms and pedigrees and clotheslines, knees to the corner, whatever. Finally, we get that, that long-awaited sweet chin music, or maybe it might have been a super kick if he didn't have time to tune up the band. Finally, he smacks him, the sweet chin music, and then finally the cover. But the way he's covering him is that both men's shoulders are on the ground. Shawn's over Hunter, Hunter's over Shawn with their arms. 1, 2, 3, but it looks like Shawn's on top, so ding, 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 we have a new World Heavyweight Champion. I remember watching it in those near falls. The near falls really got me. I was 14. 1, 2, oh my God, he's so close. If you can create a long, lengthy-ass half-hour match with so many near falls, you've got me hooked. And it better be for a world title. That's the icing on the cake right there. Oh, man. See, I'd get so excited with wrestling, even though I knew at that time the nature of how the business works and, the predetermined outcomes and whatnot. I'm not the one writing the show, so I have no idea what the outcome's going to be. I can make a prediction, but a prediction means I could be wrong. So, just because I knew how wrestling works didn't deter me from it. I still love it to this day, and I miss that excitement. I'm chasing that feeling. So yes, HBK thought finally had done it. He hadn't been a world champion since the previous year when he won it at the Chamber in Survivor Series 02. Eric Bischoff, then Raw general manager, comes out when nobody asked him to, and he says, "No, no, 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 no! There is no new world heavyweight champion. Clearly both men's shoulders were on the mat. Therefore, this match is a draw. Either it's a draw or he reverses the decision. Triple H wins by DQ, or Shawn wins by DQ. Wins the match, but not the belt, and Shawn gives him a super kick for his troubles. Well, fuck you, Eric Bischoff. Go fuck yourself." Oh, man, but we get that happy ending with Shawn Michaels, standing tall, getting Evolution out of the ring, Bischoff out of the ring. Bischoff always favored the heels, of course. And we don't have a new world champion leading into 2004, but Shawn is standing tall, and their feud's just going to continue. So, great stuff. December 29th, 2003. Go back, watch that main event. You will not be sorry. My second favorite match of all time brings us to 2007. John Cena versus the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. April 23rd, 2007, Raw from London, England. Raw was on a European tour. The previous week they were in Milan, which was the famous debut of one Santino Marella as a plant in the audience when he beat Umaga for the Intercontinental title with help from Bobby Lashley. Then we get this awesome rematch from WrestleMania 23, but the belt isn't on the line. John Cena was the WWE champion, but this was a non-title match. And guess what? It lasted 47 minutes, and that wasn't supposed to happen. 47-minute main event. That's like an hour. That's the last hour of Raw. And I think this might have been, was it a 3-hour Raw? They were doing 2-hour Raws then, but this might have been a special 3-hour Raw, which they did every now and again. Not like every week, 3 hours. It's just too much. They need to chop it back to 2. I'd be okay with 1 hour even, but anyways, wow, did this match deliver? John Cena was a brawler. He had some technical skills which he was working on, but Shawn really carried the whole technical aspect, the mat work, and of course doing as much as he could, the high flying. Given his age, he was a little older now, so he wasn't doing the high flying stuff as much and all the back surgeries, so it's an older Shawn Michaels, but still the man, as best as he can be. So what else can I tell you about this match? So I just remember watching it and thinking, okay, it's just your average run-of-the-mill main event. I was 18. I was on spring break from high school. I was a junior that year. And I noticed we had like 3 or 4 or 5 commercial breaks, and this match is still going. My brother tells me, just wait and see this main event. You'll love it. Okay, I trust it. I'll take your word for it. I trust his judgment on such things. So I watch it, and then there's all these near falls. The belt's not even on the line, and I find myself more and more invested in this match. Oh God, if Shawn wins, that's another stepping stone as far as giving him that well-deserved rematch. It was leading into Backlash that Sunday, where Backlash 07's main event for the WWE title was a fatal 4-way, sudden death, Cena, Michaels, Orton, and Edge. Edge and Randy Orton were supposed to be the main event, but their match got canceled because of how long this match went, overtime. So they main evented the next week's Raw, which kind of didn't make sense because it was after the main event, but, you know, what can you do at the time? Creatively, it wasn't the best time for the company. Pardon me, excuse me. So HBK really pulled out all the stops. He wanted revenge for not winning the belt. Cena certainly wasn't holding back either. It was one of Cena's best performances up to that point. It was on free TV. And the magnitude of how long they were able to withstand being in that match, the endurance from both guys really spoke volumes to how much they cared about making sure we had the best possible goddamn match we could watch. And they gave us everything and then some. And so another great Raw main event. This is only my second favorite in the entire history of Raw I've been watching. Please do yourself a favor and go watch it. Oh, man. I'll talk about a couple of more matches here. Let's see. I have a whole bunch, but we're not going to get to every single one. Here's a weird one from May the 4th, 1998. I haven't seen this one in ages. It was the main event, a no-holds-barred / false count anywhere match. Mick Foley, not in any of his 3 characters, just Mick Foley versus Terry Funk. Foley, I might have been in a storyline where he was thinking about quitting the company. He abandoned the Dude Love. He didn't quite abandon Dude Love character, but the Love Shack, I think, might have been abandoned quickly. That was a good TV talk show segment interspliced in the show at the time. So for some reason, he went back to just being Mick Foley, kind of disowned his other characters. Might have just been a midlife crisis of sorts. I don't really know. I don't remember. Terry Funk was Chainsaw Charlie, but the two of them had separated after WrestleMania, went their separate ways, and Funk was just kind of hanging around on the roster. So these 2 old guys decided to have this match, and they were both. Foley was a lot younger. He was kind of my age. I'm 37 now. Foley was probably like 32, and Funk was probably in his late 40s then, pushing 50. So they're having this match. It starts in the ring, and then it goes everywhere. This has really illustrated the whole false count anywhere concept, because they go into the stands, and then they're doing back suplexes off of tables from the bleachers, from the sections where you sit in the audience, in the crowd, onto a table nearby, and they're falling on cables and wires, where they produce the sound and everything, all the production. Finally, they make their way back, and Pat Patterson's the guest referee, because the Stooges were heavily involved in any angle involving McMahon or Austin or Foley at this point in time, spring 98. And finally, Foley gets the win with the double arm DDT, and it's not a match a lot of people remember, but for 2 veterans at the time, Foley was already kind of had that grizzled veteran look, and he was much younger than I am now. They really showed that there's more to what WWF can do than meets the eye. And they pulled out all the stops, and they didn't let their age stop them. And both men continued on with their careers, respectively. And Dude Love was then brought back because McMahon was happy that... I think I'm remembering this better. I think McMahon was disappointed Dude Love didn't beat Austin at In Your House Unforgiven. Mick Foley kind of was thinking, okay, maybe I should quit because my boss isn't happy with me. And then finally McMahon was impressed that he won the match, and then finally donned the Dude Love tie-dye shirt colors again, and got the Love Shack going, had the school bus there, and, at least for another month until In Your House Over the Edge, and then Dude Love was done after that, as he couldn't take the belt from Austin. So Dude Love was a pawn in McMahon's scheme to rid the championship off, get the belt off of Austin, and rid the Federation of Austin. So... yes, it was a storyline that was it was a low-key great match, but not something people are going to say, oh, that was the best Raw match ever. Probably, it definitely wasn't, but a great match nevertheless. One more match I want to get to is a match that really helped turn the tide in the Monday Night Wars in WWF's favor, even if the tide was already turned in our favor. I'm talking about January the 4th, 1999, the main event for the World Wrestling Federation Championship, The Rock defending against Mankind. That'll put a lot of butts in seats, says Tony Schiavone. Well, Tony, it did, because 6 million people, over that many, turned over to watch Raw that night. And I was already watching Raw, so you didn't have to tell me to change the channel. It was a follow-up match from Survivor Series and then Rock Bottom. Foley looked like the match wasn't going to turn in his favor. It didn't look like he was going to win until Austin came out. He was wearing his long-sleeve black shirt with the skull on the cover. He's had so many shirts, I forget which one this was. And then he had the blue jeans, the dark blue jeans. Gives Rock a stunner, places Foley's arm on top of Rock. 1, 2, 3, ding, ding, ding. And then Mankind has the schizophrenic theme with the beatbox to it, with the beats to it. Da, 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 da. It's on Uncaged 5 if you want to listen to that. But man, it was a great way to kick off the new year and really show WCW what we're all about. You know, they weren't nice to Mick Foley over there, who previously competed as Cactus Jack, and they didn't think they could make much of a star out of him, but boy, did they prove it wrong. Did he prove them wrong? DX Incorporation were involved in that match to ensure it was a fair fight. I remember Triple H and Road Dogg hoisting Foley up, and he's like, "Yo, Adrian, I did it! Mrs. Foley's baby boys finally won the big one." Oh my God, a well-deserved moment for Mick Foley, and probably the best of his 3 mini championship reigns, because when he was 3-time champ, those reigns sure didn't last long. So Mankind, Mick Foley was World Wrestling Federation champion all of 43 days combined in 3 reigns, and that's sad and pathetic looking at it from a time standpoint, but not in the standpoint that he was a good placeholder while they were getting Stone Cold Steve Austin ready to come back to win the belt. So he and Rock played hot potato with the belt. And a lot of that had to do with Vince Russo. He was big on title changes all the time. And not good for world titles, but maybe intercontinental. But we can talk about that another time. And certainly Hogan and Nash with the finger poke of doom did no favors, because that was the start of the decline of WCW. So this match was legendary, not just for it being great in-ring action-wise, but revolutionary in that it saved the company in the Monday Night Wars with the ratings and whatnot, and took WWF to all new levels as far as competition's concerned. So go World Wrestling Federation, really. That's all I can say. So there's plenty more great Raw matches. Leave some in the comments if you have any you'd like to share that I might have forgotten to mention. And thank you all again for listening. This has been another great edition of Harry Fling Wrestling. I am your host, Harry Fling, and until next time, everybody, bye-bye.